Hello students, I hope you all are keeping well. Today I will be speaking on the feminist critique of traditional epistemologies. Now we all know that the definition of epistemology is a theory of knowledge. Now according to feminists, all the traditional epistemologies have been arranged in an order of hierarchy. And in this order of hierarchy, science is placed at the top of hierarchy. That is, it is given more importance, more priority than other subjects. And the second important point is there is a deep interrelationship between power and production of knowledge, because it has been found that the various structures in the society, especially the oppressive structure, play a very important role in perpetuating a particular form of knowledge, and how that knowledge and oppression reinforces each other. Now, what are the different questions or criterias which we can underline or which we can ask, or which the feminist critique they pose while they make an evaluation of the traditional epistemologies? Now, traditional epistemology, it is a very vast subject. But here, some of the questions which Sandra Harding has raised that can form the criteria for understanding whether the traditional epistemologies have been feminist oriented or not. The first important criteria is who is the knower. Whether it is the man who is only supposed to be the knower of knowledge, or it should be the woman who should also possess knowledge, who should also be the knower of knowledge, agent of knowledge. Because in the traditional epistemology, we find that men are considered largely as a knower of knowledge. We will see in details when we subsequently take up each of these points. And the second question is, what are the different tests and what are the different experiences that form the basis or background for the beliefs and practices to be converted into knowledge? Whether it is only the men's experiences, their viewpoints, which forms the test for converting certain practices into knowledge, or is it the woman's experience also which are taken into consideration? Third important point is, what is the role of objectivity and subjectivity in the production of knowledge? Because all the traditional epistemologies have been they have been oriented towards the objectivity in research and in the research outcome rather than the subjective form of research. And the next question is, what is the role of the researcher vis-a-vis his research subject, his or her research subjects? Whether the researcher should be disinterested, dispassionate in his research subjects, or he should be actively involved. He should mention his background, his involvement in the various social activities. This is another important point. And the next question, which is very important, is what is the goal of knowledge production? Whether the knowledge that is produced is aimed at maintaining status quo, or whether it is aimed at bringing about social change. Because the goal of knowledge production has important repercussions for feminist studies and for challenging the androcentric biases in the traditional epistemologies. The next important question is, what is the role of reason and emotion in the production of knowledge? Because we all know that reason has been given a very important place in the production of knowledge. whereas emotions are considered secondary and have no role in the production of knowledge in the traditional epistemologies. These are some of the important questions, and with the help of these questions, if we interrogate the various aspects of traditional epistemology, we can find answer to the question whether it is comprehensive, in nature, whether it caters to the interest of men and women equally, or it is androcentric in nature. So now let us consider each one of these points in detail. Now the first important point is, who is the knower of knowledge? Now we all know that all the traditional epistemology have given primary importance to men. Men has been considered the primary knower. Men's experience have formed the basis of selecting the research problem or guiding the research. Men have been primarily involved in doing research. The role of women has been very insignificant. That is, the voice of women have been negligible or almost silent. Now the feminist critique, they argue that there is need for creating alternative epistemologies where woman voice is also present. It is also recognized. Their experiences are also given due importance, because they find that in the traditional epistemology, whether you take science, whether you take history, whether you take sociology or political science, everywhere we find that the voice and the experiences, viewpoints of women are missing, or they are present to a very small extent. Now the second important question is, what are those tests or experiences which should form the basis for the production of knowledge? Now all the traditional epistemology, we find that it is the men's experiences, men's viewpoint, men's understanding of the society, their way of looking at the world, that have been primarily important in deciding what should be the research problem, what should be the hypothesis, what should be the research design, and how the research will be carried out. Now, all these stages of scientific research, though they are considered neutral, objective, unbiased, but somehow men's experiences have indirectly or directly impacted these all stages of research process. Now, feminists, they argue that there is need to include women's experiences or women's lives also in understanding the various oppression which are taking place in society and how to change them. Their experiences can form a very rich source of research data and a very rich source of topics on which research can be done and knowledge can be created. Moreover, men's experiences and women's experiences are different in nature. Their way of looking at the world are different. Even men and women are plural in themselves. Men is not a single category. Men belong to different race, community, culture. In the similar way, women also belong to different community, religion, caste, and so on. And there are, because of these different social identities or social divisions, there is no one feminism but multiple feminism. So different experiences have to be taken into account, and there is no doubt that these multiple experiences of feminism will help in enriching the knowledge, will help in the process of knowledge production, and will make the knowledge more comprehensive, more universal in nature, and more objective in nature, which we will see in the subsequent points. The third important question is whether objectivity or subjectivity should form the basis of research. Now we know that in all the traditional epistemology, especially when we talk about science, objectivity is a very important point. The researcher is supposed to be objective, neutral in nature. His background should not influence the research outcome. And even the research process should not be influenced by different social factors. It should be objective in nature, neutral in nature, unbiased in nature. Whereas the feminists argue that any such objective type of research is going to be androcentric in nature. It has to be one-sided in nature. Because the norms upon which the scientific methods are based, those norms are not universal in nature. They do not take into consideration women's lives, women's experiences. Because men and women are placed in different plane in the society, having different status, different conditions, different social rights, and have their different economic and cultural background. So how can we have an objective research when there are so much of diversities in the real life situation? When they are subjected to so much of oppression in the society, when they have so many problems which are unique in nature, which are different from the men, then how can we exclude the subjective element in the research? So if we keep the objective element, then somehow we are in fact not catering to the true scientific methods. In a way, objectivity is producing biases and prejudices in our research. So therefore the knowledge which is produced is one-sided in nature. So feminists argue that any theory of knowledge should include the subjective or lived experiences of women. Because lived experiences of women, they provide a rich source of knowledge. And it is not only the lived experiences, but it is also the woman as researcher can better understand the problems of women, can better connect with their problems, and can better produce knowledge which is not sexist and androcentric in nature. So especially with regards to issues related to women, it is very essential that it has to be subjective in nature. And the third important point is that women have different experiences, and these experiences, they differ because of their belonging to different race, culture, place, caste, and many other social classes to which they belong. And because of these differences, they have different experiences. And therefore, these experiences can form a rich source of knowledge if the subjectivity of the research is taken into account equally along with the objectivity. And we must also remember that even for a woman, her role in different social forms are different and the experiences are different. For example, the experiences of women as a teacher and as a housewife is totally different. So these differences in experiences can help in making a very enriched understanding of our social complexities, of our social structures, our social realities, and help in building a more comprehensive and more authentic account of our society. It can help in better understanding of our world. Otherwise, with the present theories of knowledge, we are not able to get a comprehensive understanding of what is truly happening in the society, especially those who are belonging to marginalized sections, which includes women also. Therefore, any research or research process, if it has to be truly universal, if it has to be truly objective in nature, it has to include the subjective. In fact, the feminists argue that by including the subjective elements or experiences of women, you make the research more objective, more rational, more scientific. And therefore, there is no problem with the methods. But the problem is with how you are using those methods in understanding the social realities. Now, the next important question is, what is the role of the researcher vis-a-vis his research subject, his or her research subjects? Whether he should be a disinterested or dispassionate researcher, or he should be involved with his research subjects in an active way. Now, we all know that in the traditional epistemology, the researcher is supposed to be neutral. He is supposed to keep a distance from different social prejudices or social influences when he is doing research. But we know that since the formulation of research problem to generation of hypotheses to building up the research design, at every stage there is a anthrocentric influences on the process of research, and that in a way influences the research outcome also. That makes the research outcome one-sided, or it is not always comprehensive in nature. It does not bring a complete picture of the reality. Therefore, the feminists, they argue that in order to build a comprehensive epistemology, we have to actually involve the research scholars or the researchers in the research subjects, and we have to make a critical examination of both of them. We have also to take into consideration the background, the social background of the researcher. For example, if the researcher is a woman, what is her experiences? What are her viewpoints? How her viewpoints, how her experiences can influence the research outcome, or how they can help in better understanding the research problem, how she can better connect with other women, can understand other women's lives in a much more better way than a man who is more objective or who is a non-feminist. So a feminist can be both men and women. It is not simply the women who are feminist. So how a feminist connects with the women or the research subjects? So therefore, it is not possible when we are making study of the marginalized sections or those who have been oppressed like women to adopt a dispassionate or disinterested attitude as we find in the tradition. We have to adopt a subjective approach. We have to immerse ourselves in the research subjects. We have to be subjective in nature, which I am actually repetitively emphasizing in my earlier explanations also. Now, the next important point, which is very important, is what is the goal of research? Because ultimately, the objective of knowledge production is very important, because that will help in bringing about changes in the society. So, whether the objective of knowledge production is maintaining status quo or it is bringing about change in the society. If you see those epistemologies which are influenced by men's attitude, men's ideas, or non-feminist influences, we find that it is basically aimed at maintaining status quo or highlighting only those problems which come into the review of men. Because some of the problems or issues which men don't face, so they don't consider it worth to be researched. So therefore, they do not form the part of the research process. They do not form the part of the knowledge production. That is also another important point. So whether it is because of their not coming into contact with the real life solutions, or it is intentionally they are not taking those problems well when they are doing the research, is equally important to understand how it impacts the final objectives of knowledge production. So feminists argue that the objectives of feminism or women lib movement is basically to bring about change. It is also aimed at understanding the various oppressive structures in the society, various layers of exploitation in the society, injustices in the society. And those injustices need to be explained. For that, we have to do research. Second is that we have to find solutions for their emancipation, how they can be emancipated. What can be the solutions to bring their present conditions to an end? For this, we need to take up those questions. We need to undertake research in such a way that we get research outcomes which cater to these objectives. That is, analysis of the oppressive conditions in the society and how to build solutions to those oppressions. So if we have the ends in mind before we are doing research, then our goals are already clear to us. So what is the goal of the knowledge production? We want to maintain status quo, or we want to bring about change in the social structure, in our policies, or in our attitudes, in our behaviors. It can be anything. So goal of knowledge production is very, very important. So change, emancipation, transformation is the goal of the feminist epistemology. And there are two important feminist epistemology which I would like to mention in brief. First is the feminist empiricism and second is the feminist standpoint. Now in the feminist empiricism, they argue that there is no problem with the norms of empiricism or the scientific method. It is well equipped to deal with all the conditions or to study all the conditions of the society, to bring a comprehensive and enlarged form of knowledge. But they argue that there is need to include or there is need to involve the researcher in the research subjects, and also there is need to understand the background of the researcher and how it influences the research process while we are doing research. And therefore they argue that it cannot be possible to maintain a totally objectivity in doing research. There has to be a subjective element. And when I am talking about the subjective element, it means that the subjectivity of the researcher should be included while doing a critical examination, because that will make the research more objective in nature, because that will include the feminist viewpoints also, that will include the women's lives and experiences also, their viewpoints also. Hence it will make the knowledge more comprehensive, more enlarged and more universal in nature, more objective in nature. And therefore the role of the feminist movements in producing more women researchers and women researchers are very important from the feminist empiricism point of view. And the next is feminist standpoint. Feminist standpoint, they basically emphasize on considering the experiences of women as the source of knowledge. They say that it is not the simply by maintaining a distance or by adopting a more truer form of objective sense of doing scientific research that we can enlarge the scope of knowledge, but it is by including the woman's experience, because women experiences are considered as source of knowledge, and women's experiences can form a very important form of standpoint which can help in understanding the lives of the oppressed people, and it can help in bringing forth the viewpoints of those marginalized sections which includes women before the society. Therefore, it is very important to include the lived experiences or to include more women as women researchers while doing research or in the process of knowledge production. And The last important and very, which is vital also, point is the role of reason and emotion in the production of knowledge. Now we know that in all the traditional epistemology, reason has been considered more important and it has been given primacy over emotions. Now why reason and emotion binary is important to understand. Now we know that in the traditional epistemologies we find number of binaries: male, female, nature, culture, reason, emotion, public, private, and so many other binaries. Now out of them, reason has been associated with men. Reason is public, reason is rational, reason is male. Emotion is associated with private, with women. It is irrational. Reason is considered to be important for the production of knowledge. Emotion leads to suffering. It has no role in the production of knowledge. It is subjective in nature. And therefore reason, by associating reason with men, women have been actually systematically excluded from the production of knowledge, or they have not been considered as persons fit to be the knower of knowledge or as fit to be involved in the production of knowledge, and therefore it has led to a systematic marginalization of women in the knowledge production process. So therefore, in this hierarchy of reason and emotion, we find that it has actually systematically favored a particular class of men who belong to a particular class, and it has systematically marginalized men of the subjugated class and also women. Their viewpoints have been given more importance. Moreover, women have not been given any training in reason because they are said to be associated with doing the domestic work, with raising and upkeep of children. They are considered to be emotional, so they are trained in the all the ways in which the emotions can be handled, whereas they are not given any training in reason. Reason is associated with men and also men of a particular community or class. Now because of this division, or because of this inferior status of emotion, a large amount of experiences which could have formed an important part of knowledge have been excluded or have been totally ignored. Now, emotion. Feminists have argued that emotions also constitute a very important part of knowledge. Emotions are not only important for men, for women, but they are also equally important part of men's lives. So when you try to exclude emotion, you are trying to exclude a very important aspect of men's personality also, along with the women's lives and women's experiences. So therefore, experiences or emotions which are connected with the subjective experiences should also be taken into account while developing knowledge. And any critical reflection of knowledge helps in building theory, whether it is political theory or social theory or any other theory for that matter. Therefore, it is important that in the production of knowledge, emotions should also be considered as an important means of creating knowledge. Now, why it is important? It is important for a very good reason, and it is that those who are oppressed, those who are marginalized like women, and they have their different experiences, when they talk from their experiences, when they speak out from the standpoint of their lived experiences, they are more able to portray a true picture of what is happening in the society. A woman who has been victimized of domestic violence can better explain her position, explain her conditions, explain the reasons behind why it is taking place than an outsider who has never suffered domestic violence in her life or in his life, for example. Therefore, it is very important that we involve the emotion aspect also as an important source of knowledge, because most of our experiences are actually connected with different emotions of our life, and if we exclude them, we are excluding a very important part of our knowledge creation and how our society actually works in the society. uh, how our actually society functions. So, to conclude, I would like to say that what the feminist critique of traditional epistemology actually trying to convey is that we have to question whether the traditional epistemology is fit enough to include women, their lived experiences, their perspective and viewpoints in their knowledge production process or not. If they are not involving, or if they have not done so, then there is need to devise alternative epistemology, or there is need to reform and remodify the present epistemology. And the second important point is that we have learned from this presentation is that what is the goal of the knowledge production? Whether the goal is changing the society or maintaining status quo or the present oppressive power structures in the society, because that will define to a great extent what researches are taking place in the society, on what topics researches are taking place in society. And the third is the entire research process, starting from the identification of problem to hypothesis formulation to the entire research design. We have to involve not only women but also involve their background. We have to involve them in large numbers. We have to involve them in administrative and educational institutions so that they can help in making the research, making the understanding of our society more complete, more human in nature. We can have a better work plan for reforming our society and making this world a better place to live for all of us. And the last point is the research cannot be totally objective, because if it is totally objective, then it will produce only a particular type of knowledge based on certain experiences, or in fact based on certain prejudices which have been till now ignored to a large extent. What has been considered objective was not actually completely objective. It was subjective in nature. It had many prejudices. So when we are making a subjective analysis, we have to make a critical evaluation also of the subjective analysis. But subjectivity has to be included, because that will help in understanding the lived realities of many marginalized sections in the society. And finally, the role of reason in emotions. That means that we have to consider many different other means of acquiring knowledge, whether it is reason, whether it is emotion, whether it is experiences. They all have to be included to understand our society, to understand our lives, to understand our social realities in a much more comprehensive manner. So, dear students, I hope you enjoyed the lecture, and I have come to the end of today's lecture. Uh, Please give me feedback on my WhatsApp number and also on my email, which you all have. And I will be presenting more lectures on the other topics very soon. Hope you all like this lecture, and uh, you study in your home, you maintain your preparations, stay safe, keep well, and be happy. And if you have any problem, you can contact me on my number, on my WhatsApp, and also email ID. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.